You know that highly specific kind of low-level dread you feel?
Absolutely.
Like you're just sitting at your desk, it's a Tuesday afternoon, you're staring at a blinking cursor.
Right, yeah. The classic Tuesday slump.
Yeah, and you've got like a spreadsheet open on one monitor.
And then probably an email draft on the other that you're avoiding.
Exactly. And in the background of your mind, there's this quiet, persistent voice just asking, is this it? Should I just make the leap?
It's the modern professional's existential crisis, really.
Totally.
And we always frame it as this ultimate leap into the unknown, which, inherently makes it terrifying.
Right, but we frame it that way because society has essentially sold us a total falsehood.
A completely fabricated binary.
Yes, we are bombarded with this binary choice. Like,
Yeah.
you are either a traditional employee.
Which is pitched as safe, but, totally soul-crushing.
Exactly. Or, on the flip side, you blow your entire life up to become an entrepreneur.
Which is pitched as this liberating thing, but also incredibly financially reckless.
Right. So today, for this deep dive, we are tearing that entire premise down.
We really are. It's completely outdated.
The idea that you have to choose between being an employee and being an entrepreneur isn't just wrong. It is actively sabotaging your potential for leadership.
It creates this false dichotomy that just paralyzes highly capable people.
Yeah, it really does.
We treat these two paths as if they are like opposing biological species. But structurally speaking, they are just different rooms in the exact same house.
And to understand the architecture of that house, we are pulling our insights today from a genuinely wild piece of source material.
Oh, wild is the perfect word for it.
Right. It's a publication titled Employment, Entrepreneurship, and the Adaptive Steward.
Authored by Dr. Carlton Johnson.
Yeah, also known as Doc C. And I don't use the word wild lightly here because the meta-context of how this text was actually written.
That's half the reason we chose it for this deep dive.
Exactly.
The methodology behind this text, it completely changes how you absorb the information.
It really does. So Dr. Johnson, who founded this Spectrix Metaphysical Institute,
Right.
he didn't just lock himself in an ivory tower to write this book.
No, he acted more as a mediator, a synthesizer between two highly advanced, fundamentally opposed AI research models.
Which is just so fascinating. So on one side of the table, you have an AI representative named Doc C.
Named after himself.
Yeah.
Which is a fun little detail.
Right. And this AI was programmed to represent Spectrix. Its entire data set, all its processing power, was focused on the micro.
Human consciousness.
Yeah, human consciousness, mind-body integration, behavioral transformation.
Basically the metaphysical principles.
Exactly. It's looking purely at the internal human operating system.
But then, sitting across the virtual table, you have an AI named Christian.
Right.
And Christian represents an entity called WaveRen LLC. Christian's domain is the macro.
Completely different vibe.
Oh, totally. Doesn't care about your feelings at all. He cares about organizational architecture.
Systems thinking.
Yeah, business intelligence, and just cold, hard strategic execution.
So you have the ultimate human-centric intelligence debating the ultimate corporate systems intelligence.
And Dr. Johnson just forced these two models to collaborate.
He forced them to argue, debate, and eventually synthesize a unified framework for human potential in the workplace.
It's brilliant.
It is, and we are going to look at the exact frameworks they produced.
Right.
So if you are an employee feeling that itch to transition into leadership,
Or if you're just exhausted by the pressure to, pick a lane.
yeah, this deep dive will rewire how you approach your entire career.
We should probably start by dissecting the core myth these AIs targeted first.
Yes, let's get into it.
The concept of identity versus context. Society insists that employee and entrepreneur are fundamental identities.
Right, like they're baked into your DNA.
Exactly. The narrative dictates that an employee is someone who is fundamentally built to execute tasks within someone else's vision.
Right, they are specialized.
They're risk-averse, they require structure.
While the entrepreneur is mythologized as, like, the maverick.
The apex predator of capitalism.
Yes. The person who shoulders all the risk, conjures organizations out of thin air, bows to absolutely no one.
It's an incredibly seductive narrative for anyone feeling stifled in a cubicle.
It really is. It's seductive, but as the text points out, functionally incorrect.
Completely incorrect. The consensus reached by both the metaphysical AI and the systems AI is that employment and entrepreneurship are not identities at all.
Right.
They are merely contexts, external environment.
It's environments.
And when you mistake an environment for an identity, you trap yourself.
Okay, let me push back on that for a second.
Sure, go ahead.
Because I can hear someone listening right now arguing that the risk profile alone creates a different identity.
Okay, I see where you're going.
Like, if I leverage my own house to start a company, I am fundamentally a different type of person than the guy clocking in at 9 a.m. for a guaranteed salary, aren't I?
The risk profile is definitely different, yeah.
Yeah.
But risk is a condition of the environment. It's not the core identity of the human navigating it. The text introduces this concept of the adaptive steward as the true underlying identity.
The adaptive steward, I love that term.
It's great. A steward is someone entrusted with the careful management and multiplication of something valuable,
Right.
whether that is capital, a team, a vision, or even just a specific skill set.
So the stewardship is the constant.
Mm.
The employment or the entrepreneurship is just the variable.
Precisely. Let's look at how this manifests in reality.
Yeah, give me an example.
Consider a high-level research physician. They practice medicine in a massive hospital system.
So they are technically an employee.
Right. They're on a payroll, navigating all that corporate bureaucracy, but they're simultaneously running clinical trials, applying for independent grants.
Developing new medical devices, maybe?
Exactly. Or take a senior software engineer who writes code for a massive tech conglomerate by day, but contributes heavily to open source architecture by night.
By societal definitions, those people are walking contradictions.
Right, we want to force them into a box. Like, are you the corporate drone or the innovator? Pick one.
But they aren't suffering from an identity crisis at all.
Not at all. They are simply expressing their core stewardship through multiple avenues.
The environment just dictates the specific tools they use.
Exactly. Their underlying drive to create value remains identical.
You know, it reminds me of looking at a master chef.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Right. If you label yourself the Michelin star recipe chef or the food truck pioneer, you've already lost.
You're limiting yourself.
You are just a master of culinary arts. That's the core.
Right.
Sometimes the environment demands you execute a 200-year-old French recipe perfectly, within a rigid kitchen hierarchy.
And sometimes the environment demands you invent a fusion taco in a truck at 2 a.m.
Exactly. You aren't changing who you are. You are just adapting your mastery to the context.
That is a phenomenal way to visualize it. The mastery is the stewardship. The kitchen is just the context.
I love that.
And this leads to what Dr. Johnson calls the shift from binary anxiety to adaptive wisdom.
Yes, let's talk about that shift.
Instead of agonizing over, should I quit my job? Or am I a real entrepreneur?
Which is exhausting.
So exhausting. The adaptive steward asks a much more grounded question. What does wisdom require during this season?
I really want to highlight the word season there.
It's a crucial word.
It completely removes the permanence that makes career transitions so terrifying.
It does, because a season implies a temporary environmental condition.
Right.
Sometimes wisdom dictates that you need the steady capital, the specific mentorship, and the low-risk training ground of being an employee.
It's a season of accumulation. You're gathering resources.
Exactly. Other times, wisdom dictates that you have outgrown the current structure and you need to build a new one.
But you cannot accurately assess what a season requires if your internal interpretive lens is, distorted.
And it usually is. Which brings us to the first major hurdle in this transition.
Right, because you can't just intellectually agree that you are a steward and expect your life to magically change.
No, awareness isn't enough. The text dives really deeply into the mechanics of how we actually view our reality.
Which introduces this massive framework called CAMP-P.
Yes. CAMPIOC, Consciously Applied Metaphysical Principles.
Okay, we need to pause immediately right here.
I know what you're going to say.
Because the word metaphysical is going to make half our audience, specifically the hard-nosed business strategy listeners, just aggressively roll their eyes.
Oh, for sure.
They are tuning in for leadership frameworks, not crystals and meditation retreats.
Right.
How did a cold, systems-obsessed AI like Christian even tolerate Doc C injecting metaphysics into a corporate strategy text?
It's a really vital distinction to make. In this context, metaphysics is stripped of all the mysticism.
Okay.
The AIs defined it purely as the study of underlying reality, specifically how your internal consciousness dictates your external perception.
Oh, that makes sense.
The foundational rule of CAMP is that every single external decision you make in your career begins as an internal interpretation.
Okay, break that down mechanically for us. What does that internal interpretation actually look like in a day-to-day business setting?
Let's use a highly granular example from the text.
Perfect.
Imagine a mid-level manager at a legacy auto manufacturing company.
Okay.
On a random Tuesday morning, the executive board announces a massive pivot.
A pivot, always a scary word.
Always. They are slashing the traditional marketing budget by 40% and reallocating all of it to an unproven AI-driven digital sales division.
Wow. Okay, so the circumstances there are objective facts on a spreadsheet.
Exactly. Just numbers on a screen.
A terrifying spreadsheet if you happen to be in traditional marketing.
Oh, absolutely terrifying.
Right.
But let's look at two different managers in that same department.
Okay, let's track them.
Manager A operates with a defensive, fear-based consciousness. Their internal interpretation of that spreadsheet is, this is a targeted threat to my job security. My skills are becoming obsolete. The executives are complete idiots.
Which, to be fair, is a very normal, very human reaction.
Completely normal. But watch the chain reaction that happens.
Okay.
Because of that interpretation, Manager A's behavior starts to change. They become secretive.
They pull back.
Yeah, they stop volunteering for cross-functional teams. They spend half their day aggressively polishing their resume.
And the other half complaining on Slack.
Exactly. And they actively resist the new AI tools out of pure spite.
So they are essentially ensuring their own obsolescence.
Without even realizing it. Now, look at Manager B facing the exact same spreadsheet.
Same facts, same day.
Same facts. But Manager B has applied CAN-P. Their internal consciousness is anchored in stewardship, not job title preservation.
Oh, interesting. So what is their interpretation?
Their interpretation is, this is a sudden vacuum of leadership. The executives don't actually know how to deploy this AI effectively, which is why the rollout is so chaotic. This is an opportunity.
Wow. The facts haven't changed at all, but the reality they are experiencing is entirely different.
And because the interpretation is different, the behavior diverges radically.
Right.
Manager B doesn't panic. They spend their weekend reading up on AI marketing integration.
Just getting ahead of the curve.
Yeah. And then on Monday, they pitch a hybrid workflow to the VP, offering to bridge the gap between the legacy team and the new AI division.
They just made themselves totally indispensable.
Exactly.
And you know, this perfectly answers my earlier pushback about metaphysics being fluffy.
Right.
Because Christian, the corporate systems AI, would look at Manager B and say, that is brilliant strategic execution.
Yes.
But Doc C, the metaphysical AI, points out that the strategy was literally impossible without that initial consciousness shift.
You nailed it. You cannot run high-level adaptive business strategy on a corrupted, fear-based internal operating system.
You just can't.
TMP is the process of debugging that system.
And the text actually provides specific diagnostic questions to help you do this, doesn't it?
It does. Really powerful ones. When you are sitting at your desk feeling trapped.
Staring at that cursor.
Right. Instead of asking, how do I escape this company?
Which is everyone's first instinct.
Of course it is.
Well.
But TMP requires you to ask, what assumptions are currently influencing my perception of this company?
Oh, wow. That is a deeply uncomfortable question.
Very uncomfortable.
Because it shifts all the blame from the bad boss or the boring spreadsheet directly back onto you.
It demands accountability.
It forces you to confront the idea that maybe you aren't trapped by the job. Maybe you are just trapped by your refusal to extract value from the season you are in.
It moves you from victimhood to agency.
That's powerful.
Here's another great reframe from the text. Instead of lamenting, have I abandoned my entrepreneurial dream by taking this corporate salary?
A lot of people feel that guilt.
They do. But KMP asks, how is this specific corporate season strengthening my capacity to steward that dream later?
So you start viewing the corporate job as like a paid laboratory.
That's exactly what it is.
You are getting a salary to experiment with leadership, manage difficult personalities, understand supply chains, all on someone else's dime.
It's a massive resource if you view it correctly.
Yeah.
But the text offers a pretty severe warning here.
Oh, what's the catch?
The AI's reached a consensus that awareness alone is functionally useless without a mechanical counterpart. You can sit in your cubicle, achieve this Zen-like metaphysical reframe, and see the entire corporate matrix clearly.
Right.
But if your physical behavior doesn't change, your consciousness will eventually just revert back to fear.
You can't just think your way into a new reality.
No, you cannot.
If you want to transition into leadership, you actually have to lead something in the physical world.
Exactly. Which brings us to the counterweight to CAMPP.
Right. If KPP is the internal software patch, we need an engine to actually run the new program.
And that engine is the VIBRA framework.
VIBRA, Vision Integrated by Reinforced Action.
That's the one.
I find the friction between CAMP and VIBRA so fascinating.
How so?
Well, CAMP is all about getting your mind right before you act right.
Yes.
But VIBRA almost seems to demand that you act in order to get your mind right. How do those two reconcile?
It is a symbiotic loop. The text clearly delineates them. Vision establishes the direction, but daily actions reinforce the identity.
So CAMP points the compass and VIBRA walks the miles.
Beautifully said. The core mechanical premise of VIBRA is that every single time you make a disciplined decision, you are gathering physical evidence to support the new person you are attempting to become.
There is a line in the text that we have to isolate here because it just destroys a lot of modern self-help advice.
I know exactly which line you're thinking of.
The author writes, "Confidence is accumulated evidence."
It completely dismantles the myth of inherent confidence.
Right. We are taught that confidence is this feeling you must summon.
Like you need to stand in front of a mirror and give yourself affirmations until you magically feel brave enough to take a risk.
Right. Like, I am a powerful entrepreneur. I am a powerful entrepreneur.
But the AI is determined that the human brain doesn't actually believe affirmations without proof.
The brain is too smart for that.
Way too smart. It requires data. And VIBRA provides the data.
So you take the action first.
Especially when you lack the confidence. The action generates the evidence. The evidence convinces the brain. And the brain produces confidence.
Let's ground this in a scenario so people can really picture it.
Okay, let's do it.
Say we have a listener who is, let's say, a senior accountant at a massive Big Four firm.
Got it.
They desperately want to start their own boutique financial consulting agency. They've used CAMP. They realize they aren't trapped. They are just in a season of learning.
They've done the internal work.
Exactly. But they are terrified of actually finding their first client. They have zero confidence in sales.
Very common.
How does VIBRA work mechanically for them on, like, a random Wednesday?
Okay, so the VIBRA protocol demands micro-actions that gather evidence.
Micro-actions.
Right. On Wednesday, they don't need to quit their job or land $1 million whale of a client.
That would be too much pressure.
Way too much. They simply need to send one email to a local business owner offering a free 15-minute audit of their cash flow.
That is the action.
That is the action.
And their brain is probably screaming at them not to hit send because of imposter syndrome.
Oh, it's fighting them the whole way, but they hit send anyway.
Okay.
Now, even if the business owner says no, the accountant's brain registers a new piece of evidence.
What's the evidence?
I am capable of initiating a sales conversation and surviving rejection.
Wow.
Then the next day, they post one piece of original financial analysis on LinkedIn.
More evidence.
Exactly. The evidence says, I am a public authority on this topic.
So VIBRA is essentially tricking your brain into adopting a new identity by feeding it an undeniable paper trail of actions.
It's not really a trick, though. It's structural engineering.
Structural engineering.
Yes. The text lays out a very specific sequence for this. First, a repeated action becomes a reinforced behavior.
Like sending the email.
Sending one email is an action. Sending one email every single morning for a month is a reinforced behavior.
It becomes habitual. You don't have to agonize over hitting send anymore.
Right. The friction decreases dramatically.
Yeah.
Then the second stage is that reinforced behavior solidifies into identity.
Yeah, okay.
Stop telling people I'm trying to start a consulting business.
Right.
And you naturally start saying I am a financial consultant. The identity shifts because the accumulated evidence basically demands it.
But the text doesn't stop at identity, does it? It claims there is a final, highly stabilized stage that results from this whole process.
Yes, and this is where the meta-context of the two AIs really shines again.
Bring us back to Doc C and Christian.
So Christian, the system's AI, insisted that identity alone is too fragile for a harsh corporate environment.
Because a bad quarter could shake your identity.
Exactly. A bad quarter or a vicious market downturn can completely shatter someone's identity.
So it needs to be stronger.
Identity had to harden into something impervious. It had to become architecture.
Architecture, which introduces one of the most complex but honestly brilliant concepts in the source material, BNA II.
Blueprint, Nucleotide Architecture II.
When I first read that, my immediate thought was that Dr. Johnson was trying, like, a little too hard to sound like a sci-fi author.
It is a very dense piece of nomenclature, I'll admit, but when you unpack the biology analogy behind it, it is remarkably precise.
Okay, let's unpack it.
We all understand biological DNA. Your DNA is a stable architecture made up of nucleotides, those little base pairs,
Right.
and they dictate your physical reality: eye color, height, bone density.
We just accept that physical architecture as a given.
Right. Dr. Johnson, channeling the Spectrix AI, proposes that humans also possess a behavioral architecture.
A behavioral architecture.
Yes, one that dictates our psychological and professional reality. BNA II is the framework for how this architecture is physically constructed.
I want to dissect the word nucleotide in this context.
Okay.
In biology, a nucleotide is a fundamental building block. What constitutes a behavioral nucleotide according to this text?
A behavioral nucleotide is formed when the internal shift of SAMP merges with the external action of VIBRA around a specific event.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Let's go back to our accountant. The event is feeling fear about a sales call.
The gamma P interpretation is, this fear means I am growing, not failing.
Exactly, and the VIBRA action is making the call anyway.
So event, interpretation, action, that triad forms one behavioral nucleotide.
Precisely, and one nucleotide doesn't change your architecture.
Obviously not.
But when you stack thousands of these nucleotides together over time, they bind, they organize.
They fuse.
Yes. Your repeated beliefs, your emotional regulation, your conscious choices, they stop floating around as random, exhausting daily efforts.
They fuse into a highly structured, stable trait.
They solidify into the literal blueprint of who you are. The accountant doesn't just act brave, they fundamentally become someone who thrives in high-stakes negotiations.
Their architecture has been completely renovated.
And this brings up a crucial point of relief for anyone exhausted by the modern entrepreneurial narrative.
Oh, please, yes.
Our culture is totally addicted to this cinematic moment of transformation.
We love the movie scene.
We really do. We love the scene where the protagonist gets fed up, flips their desk, screams at their boss, dramatically walks out of the building.
And the next sequence is a fast-paced montage of them becoming a millionaire.
Right. It's the burn the boats mentality.
We are constantly told that if we don't have that dramatic burn-it-all-down moment, we aren't truly committed.
But the AIs analyzed the data and concluded that dramatic events rarely change behavioral architecture.
Drama is an emotional spike.
Yes, drama is a spike. Architecture is a structural reality. If you have a weak internal architecture and you dramatically quit your job, you don't magically become a successful entrepreneur.
What do you become?
You just become an unemployed person with a weak internal architecture who is now facing immense financial panic.
Wow. That is a harsh but very necessary reality check.
It's the truth.
The structural transformation doesn't happen in the dramatic explosion. It happens in the quiet, unglamorous accumulation of thousands of adaptive decisions.
And BNA II is the long game. It is the acknowledgement that transitioning into a leader is quite literally the process of reorganizing your own psychological blueprint, brick by tiny brick.
But let me present a scenario that challenges this stability.
Okay, throw it at me.
Having a stable architecture, like a solid brick wall, is fantastic in a predictable environment.
Sure.
But modern business is not predictable.
Not at all.
We are dealing with generative AI wiping out entire sectors in months, global supply chain collapses, sudden market pivots. If a massive earthquake hits, a rigid brick wall doesn't adapt. It just fractures and collapses entirely.
Exactly.
How does a leader with this stable BNA II architecture avoid becoming dangerously rigid?
You've hit on the exact vulnerability that the organizational AI, Christian, flagged during the collaboration.
Oh, he got that too.
He did. Stability without flexibility is fatal in business. To survive the earthquake, the architecture must possess a specialized system for internal shock absorption.
Internal shock absorption.
Yes, and this led to the development of the ARU framework.
The adaptive response unit.
Yes, and understanding how ARU was conceived provides incredible context. WaveRen, the corporate entity Christian represents, utilizes a macro framework called ARC.
Adaptive response and coherence.
Right. ARC is deployed to save failing companies by forcing internal departments to communicate.
So if the marketing department is running a massive campaign for a product that the engineering department hasn't even finished building, the company just bleeds capital.
Exactly. ARC forces marketing, engineering, and sales into a coherent communication loop.
But Dr. Johnson pointed out a glaring flaw to Christian, didn't he?
He did. She said an organization's departments cannot communicate coherently if the human leaders running those departments are internally fractured.
Organizations only adapt because the people inside them adapt.
Precisely. So ARU is the micro version. It is ARC applied directly to the human psyche.
Okay, so if an organization has departments like marketing and HR, what are the departments of the human being according to the text?
The text defines them as thought, emotion, physiology, values, and behavior.
Thought, emotion, physiology, values, and behavior. These are our internal nation states.
And in most professionals under extreme stress, those nation states are actively at war.
Right.
Think of ARU like the United Nations for your brain, translating different languages in real time to avoid global collapse.
Let's apply this UN analogy back to the mid-level auto manager whose department is being replaced by AI. We talked about how they interpreted it, but what is physically happening inside them when that announcement is made?
When the announcement hits, an employee without a developed ARU experiences a total breakdown in internal communication.
A total breakdown.
Their emotion department registers primal fear.
Naturally.
That fear immediately hijacks the behavior department, causing frantic, defensive action like lashing out in a meeting.
Right, skipping logic completely.
It completely bypasses the thought department, which would have offered rational strategy, and it completely ignores the values department, which values long-term collaboration.
And their physiology department is probably dumping cortisol into their bloodstream, making their heart race, which only reinforces the panic.
Total systemic collapse.
That is what panic is, structurally speaking.
Exactly. But let's look at the manager with a strong ARU. The earthquake hits. The emotion department still registers intense fear.
Because ARU doesn't eliminate human emotion.
No, you're still human. But ARU forces that fear to sit at the table and communicate clearly with the thought department.
So instead of the fear hijacking the body, the thought department acknowledges it. I am feeling fear because my livelihood is threatened. That is a valid data point. Now, what is our strategic response?
Exactly. The thought department regulates the physiology department, maybe through a breathwork technique, or simply taking a walk.
Just calming the nervous system.
Right. Once the heart rate settles, the thought department aligns with the values department. We value adaptability and continuous learning.
Wow.
Finally, this coherent alliance sends a unified directive to the behavior department,
Resulting in the manager calmly asking a clarifying question in the meeting, rather than throwing a tantrum or shutting down.
Adaptation is not about reacting quickly to external chaos. It is about maintaining internal coherence while the ground moves beneath you.
For a listener moving into an entrepreneurial role, this is the ultimate anchor.
It truly is.
Because when you're an employee, if your ARU fails and you panic, there is usually a manager above you to absorb that shock.
There's a safety net.
But when you are the founder or the department head, there is no shock absorber above you. If your internal architecture is fractured, the pressure will literally break you.
And worse, it will break the people working for you.
Right.
Which transitions perfectly into the macro implications of this text. What happens when an internally coherent individual, someone with a strong ARU and stable BNA II architecture, begins to actually build a company?
This is the ripple effect.
Yes.
The text makes a profound assertion here. Human development must precede organizational development.
It's non-negotiable.
But we have an entire consulting industry that gets this completely backward.
Oh, they do?
They try to fix toxic corporate cultures by, like, buying new project management software or rearranging the org chart.
Or putting ping pong tables in the break room.
Treating the symptoms while ignoring the disease.
The AIs concluded that organizations are ultimately just magnified reflections of their builders.
The text has some brilliant load-bearing correlations that we need to unpack here.
Let's hear them.
It states that an organization's capacity for innovation is a direct reflection of its leader's internal curiosity.
That makes perfect sense. If the leader is internally defensive and punishes failure, the organization's innovation will consist entirely of safe, incremental updates.
Which eventually leads to irrelevance.
Exactly.
The text also argues that trust within a company is a direct reflection of the leader's emotional maturity.
If a leader's ARU is broken, and they manage their anxiety through micromanagement or public berating, they inherently build an architecture of paranoia.
You cannot mandate trust in an employee handbook if the human writing the handbook is ruled by fear.
You really can't. And finally, strategic clarity reflects the leader's coherent thinking.
It's like evaluating the structural integrity of a skyscraper.
I love this analogy.
You can have a visionary architect draw up the most breathtaking blueprints for a 100-story tower, but if the physical bricks being used are brittle and crumbling, the skyscraper will collapse under its own weight.
The business strategy is the blueprint. The consciousness of the leader is the brick.
That's it right there.
This is where the synthesis between Doc C and Christian reaches its apex.
Yeah.
The metaphysical AI develops the indestructible brick. The systems AI designs the towering blueprint. Neither can succeed without the other.
You cannot achieve long-term market dominance without doing the excruciating internal work on the consciousness of the leadership team.
So conscious leadership isn't just a trendy buzzword for HR brochures. It is the literal physics of sustainable business.
It is the physics of value creation. But this brings us to the ultimate pragmatic question.
Okay, let's get practical.
We have explored the deep mechanics of CAMP, VIBRA, BNA II, and ARU. But how does a listener actually leverage this physics on Monday morning when they are still stuck in a traditional, restrictive corporate role?
This is where we need to introduce the third path.
The third path.
The narrative told us we had to choose between being a safe employee or a free entrepreneur. But the text argues that if you develop this internal architecture, a new pathway opens up. Entrepreneurship.
Entrepreneurship. It is the ultimate expression of the adaptive steward in a corporate environment.
It is. But we must be really careful with definitions here because the corporate world often co-opts this term.
I am so glad you brought that up because I want to challenge this concept heavily.
Bring it on.
To a lot of cynical, highly intelligent employees, entrepreneurship sounds like a massive corporate scam.
It really does.
It sounds like a company saying, hey, we want you to take on the mental load, the late nights, and the stress of a startup founder to invent a new revenue stream for us.
But we are going to keep paying you your standard base salary, and we will own all of the IP.
Exactly. Why on earth would an adaptive steward give away their entrepreneurial genius for free?
It is a valid, highly pragmatic objection. And Christian, the system's AI, actually flagged that exact dynamic as an exploitation risk.
Oh, he did?
Yes. But the synthesis with the metaphysical AI provides the reframe.
Okay, what's the reframe?
The adaptive steward does not engage in entrepreneurship merely to enrich the corporation. They engage in it to rapidly accelerate their own behavioral architecture using the corporation's resources.
Okay, walk me through the mechanics of that. How does the steward actually win in that scenario?
Let's distinguish between the entrepreneur and the intrapreneur. An entrepreneur must create the opportunity from the ground up.
Right. They must secure the capital, build the legal structure, hire the talent, find the market.
The friction is immense. But an intrapreneur creates value within a pre-existing opportunity.
Oh, I see.
The capital, the infrastructure, and the market access are already funded by the employer.
The corporation is essentially providing a massive, fully funded sandbox.
Exactly. When you are an intrapreneur, you are using the company's millions of dollars in infrastructure to practice your VIBRA frameworks.
You are testing your ability to lead a team without the existential terror of making payroll.
Right. You are experimenting with product launches without risking your own mortgage. You are gathering accumulated evidence of your own competence at an accelerated rate, heavily subsidized by your employer.
So even if the company owns the IP of the product you built, you own the upgraded internal architecture.
Exactly. You walk away as a fundamentally more capable, resilient leader.
And that architecture is portable.
Highly portable. When the season changes and wisdom dictates that it is time to launch your own venture, you aren't starting from scratch psychologically.
You have the BNA II blueprint of a successful founder already installed.
That completely flips the power dynamic. You aren't being exploited by the corporation. You are strategically extracting developmental value from them.
Innovation no longer depends on whether you hold equity. Leadership no longer requires an executive title. Value creation becomes a permanent trait of your character, regardless of whose name is on the building.
This is the ultimate liberation the text promises. Employment and entrepreneurship are no longer enemies.
They are simply different training environments.
Right. Employment forces you to develop discipline, political navigation, and systemic execution.
And entrepreneurship forces you to develop risk tolerance, absolute accountability, and visionary creation.
Both demand adaptation. Both are necessary seasons for the ultimate steward.
I want to trace the entire mechanical arc of this deep dive one last time because the progression is just brilliant.
Well, let's map it out.
We started with the realization that you are not an employee or an entrepreneur. You are a steward navigating different contexts.
The foundational reframe.
Right. To navigate effectively, you deploy CAMP. You debug your internal operating system, refusing to see yourself as a victim of corporate restructuring, and choosing to interpret challenges as opportunities to build capacity.
The shift in consciousness.
But consciousness isn't enough, so you activate VIBRA. You force yourself to take micro-actions, sending the terrifying email, speaking up in the meeting, to gather the undeniable evidence your brain needs to build real confidence.
Action hardening into identity.
Through thousands of these nucleotide pairings of belief and action, you construct BNA II. You literally alter your behavioral architecture, becoming a structurally resilient leader, brick by brick, rather than relying on a dramatic, fiery exit.
The long game of structural transformation.
And when the inevitable market earthquake hits, you survive using ARU. You act like the UN for your own brain, forcing your fear to communicate with your logic and your values, maintaining internal coherence while everyone else panics.
Internal stability enabling external adaptation.
Which culminates in the ripple effect. Because you are internally coherent, the teams you lead and the organizations you build become coherent, innovative, and resilient.
Beautifully summarized.
And you become the ultimate entrepreneur, extracting massive developmental value from your current season, fully prepared to become a formidable entrepreneur in the next.
That is the complete architectural blueprint of the adaptive steward. And it brings us to the profound final consensus reached by Dr. Johnson, Doxey, and Christian.
Let's hear it.
After analyzing both the metaphysical depths of the human soul and the cold realities of corporate systems, they agreed on one absolute truth.
Lay it on us.
Lasting success is never, ever measured by the titles you acquire, the venture capital you raise, or your placement in a corporate hierarchy.
Because those are external metrics that a market crash can erase in an afternoon.
Exactly. True, indestructible success is measured exclusively by your continuous development into someone who inherently creates value, adapts with coherence, and stewards faithfully, regardless of the environment you are placed in.
It is entirely about who you structurally become.
Completely.
If you are sitting at that desk right now, staring at that blinking cursor, you don't need to blow up your life today to start acting like a founder.
You really don't.
You just have to start practicing adaptive stewardship right where you sit.
Which leaves us with a final, slightly uncomfortable thought to chew on as we wrap up this deep dive.
Where does that leave the listener tomorrow morning? Right. We've spent this time establishing that employment and entrepreneurship are just different environments to test your mastery.
Yeah.
But what if the ultimate, undeniable proof of your leadership isn't how brilliantly you perform when you finally get the startup funding or the CEO title you want?
But rather how much massive, undeniable value you can quietly create in the exact role you are currently trying to escape.
That is the true crucible. It forces you to prove your architecture before you change your environment.
It really does.
Thank you all for joining us on this deep dive into the mind of the adaptive steward. Keep interrogating those internal assumptions, keep gathering that hard evidence through action, and we will catch you on the next one.